Doing good. It's another Monday, right? It's getting ready for the news cycle for the week. USC had a really great recruiting weekend. Just coming off of that, got another, I guess, silent commit, with another emoji. So, which in my opinion is a good thing, because as soon as you come out loud, especially all these guys are out of state, the last thing you want to do is start splashing who's going to commit to your school, and then they get the full court press. So I'm excited. The names coming in the last 3 weeks, well, 3 of the last 4 weeks coming into USC, the who's who basically of defense, especially this last weekend. You can't, if you're a Trojan fan, you can't be more excited about the level of attraction that this defensive staff is bringing to the campus.
So to extend on that point, are you excited about the number of elite or quality defensive players that have USC in that final 4 or 5?
It's very rare these days when you see a guy out there that USC has actually recruited for not to have them in their final list. It's not every single one, but there's a huge swath of these top highly prized recruits, and it's weird. It'll be like 3 SEC schools and then USC, right? I mean, it's like USC's name is being thrown, and a big part of that is what Danton Lynn and what Coach Henderson are doing, just bringing a lot of attention to the program. Doug Belk's a name that carries a lot of weight as well. And I'm really excited. We're going to see what pops over the next couple of weeks. A lot of these recruits are pretty much done now with their official visits. Now it's time for them to make some decisions. And the recruiting season is going to look a little bit clearer by the end of this month when a lot of these big names start making decisions.
To set you up, Matt, I'll say it this way. During the season, we have something called the standings, the win-loss record. And we can just clearly say, okay, 2-0 is good, 4-1. Okay. We can make the evaluation just based on the wins and losses. And of course, that can be even skewed in certain directions. But the beauty, but also the frustration of college football in particular, with this long off season and the recruiting being what it is and the transfer portal, is the perception. So you've got the reality, which is, of course, where we're trying to arrive in our evaluation of this football team and this football program. And then you have the perception, which can fluctuate all over the place depending on certain signals. And then how much does that perception creep into reality and affect reality? That remains to be seen as well.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating confluence of circumstances when you think about it. I wrote a couple weeks ago that, the lack of big splash announcements, in terms of June recruiting was not anything for USC fans to worry about. But then came Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson. And obviously, one of the things that gets fed into the narrative, and this does not mean that the narrative is fair or that it's accurate, but we all know narratives can affect perceptions from recruits, from journalists, various people outside the inner sanctum of the program. And it's worth wondering. I don't have a strong opinion on this, but it's worth just putting out the question. Is the narrative surrounding USC unfair, though it might be? And I know Tim definitely thinks it's an unfair narrative, that Lincoln Riley doesn't take defense seriously. There are certain things that this program just, isn't very grown up about. That is an unfair narrative for Tim, and I think for a lot of USC diehards. But is that narrative, as wrong as it might be, affecting perceptions? Like, did that in any way nudge Justice Terry or Isaiah Gibson the wrong way, in addition to, a nice little NIL bag? Is that affecting what we're seeing? And with Tim's point about the silent commits, isn't that a sad commentary in a way? Like, oh, we can't just announce our commitments because, well, commitments really aren't commitments, until you sign on the dotted line. Why do we even have something called a commitment when a commitment really isn't a commitment? If you can just be swayed, if you can just blow in the wind, and we've had Georgia folks tell us these past couple of weeks at USC, oh, bless your heart, you didn't really think you would hold on to those guys, did you? Oh, forgive us for thinking a commitment actually meant something, right? I mean, this discourse is really dumb. And to me, as someone, again, who's never spent a lot of time or energy on recruiting, come on, folks, can't we just have a system where you visit whoever you want, however many times you're allowed to, and then after every visit, then you make a commitment, and that's it. No takebacks. And there's a parallel here with the Isaiah Rakes situation, right? He exploited that loophole where you can't play for an SEC program if you're transferring from another SEC program. So Rakes used USC as a way station, an in-between pivot point from A&M. Then he goes to USC in the winter, and then he goes to Auburn in the spring. I mean, the first off, why was that loophole not closed off? But secondly, I am as big a player freedom advocate as there is. It's great that we have a transfer portal. It's great that we have freedom of movement. But I don't think this was how it was supposed to be, where you transfer twice in the same off season. If we're going to say that there's at least some semblance of academic integrity, that this is still about getting an education in addition to pursuing an NFL career, then you shouldn't be allowed to transfer twice in the same offseason. All the compliance people, the people in administrative academic positions at different universities having to waste hours of their lives, billable hours, to shuffle paperwork and get things straightened up. That spits in the face of academic integrity. So, and people have said, in terms of academic integrity and, the process and all that other stuff, oh, we can't have a transfer portal moved from December back to January because we have to get these kids enrolled. We have to have an academic process here. But of course, if you have the transfer portal in December, coaches are getting hired and fired. How can you even have time as a coaching staff to properly line up your transfer portal goals? So there are a lot of aspects of this system that are really, really broken. And again, one of them is that a commitment really doesn't mean a commitment. So USC apparently has to do these silent commitments to prevent an outside school from swooping in and plucking them. And so this is all confusing what's real, what's real and what's not, where programs actually stand and where perception stands, and how that all blends together at USC and various other schools across the country. So it's a really interesting and layered and very complicated conversation to have.
You brought it up twice. I brought up the point about silent commit for a reason. One, there are NCAA rules. The USC cannot announce. If a kid says, I'm coming, they cannot announce the names. So it's not a conscious choice by USC not to release the names. However, it's been a strategy in the past where the staff might say to them, hey, I know you're coming, but let's keep this little intrigue. Why that's not? Because we're going for out-of-state commits. And I don't care who the coach, when Pete Carroll was the coach, it's really tough to land somebody in Georgia, right, in the heart of SEC country, and then have them commit to you. And we saw what happens. They don't go after just the kids, Mark. They go after the families. They start promising the family stuff. It's a dirty business. So a little cloak and dagger, I'd call it more just strategy. Why do you want to blast out there and make this kid a target? Why not let them enjoy the process? And there's no need. I think that the recruiting services are the ones that push these kids to commit. I think they're the ones that push these kids out and really make a target to circus whole thing, because we don't sign until December, And just like everybody, you're trying to find content, trying to find something to talk about. But at the end of the day, really, all these kids can commit right now. None of it means anything until, and like I said before, I've been saying for weeks now, even when they do sign on the dotted line, we're seeing kids go through spring ball like Jay Toya and say, I'm out. You know what I mean? It doesn't, none of this stuff matters anymore, really. It's almost like we glorify it, but it's so fluid. A kid that signs, what is a recruiting class anymore? Is it what we want to be on our team in the fall? I mean, is it possibly who might be here in 2 years? A recruiting class these days is so fluid that it almost is starting to lose the significance, because the roster turnover from year to year, the players, you see it, it used to be just the disgruntled kids that weren't getting playing time would bounce for better pastures, right? Now it's kids are looking for better situations ever. Why? Because you don't sit out anymore. So recruiting for me, this is just one of the many reasons why recruiting for me, it's great. It's fun. It's like if people are into soap operas, it's like man soap opera is all it really is. And it's these guys that are hanging their emotions on the decisions of 17, 18, and 19-year-old kids. and letting their week be ruined because some kids said they're going here, now they're going there. I don't know. I got to say that you might want to look at your priorities.
I technically agree with what you're saying, Tim, because everything that you just said, I completely again agree with, but I would need to have somebody run the numbers to let us know how many decommits there are in the transfer portal age versus what there was before. Nobody's willing to do that. And that's an exhaustive exercise. And to really track this so that we can come back and say, yes, technically, none of it matters. You can decommit, you can flip, you can do whatever you want. You can transfer in the spring during your freshman year and never step on the field for that team. All of that is completely true. But if most of those commitments are still followed through on, whatever the percentage is, 60%, 80%, 22%, I don't know. I could take a pretty logical guess, but I would like to see the numbers, because then I would say, Tim, everything you just said is technically true. However, 62% of the commitments are still coming through and they're signing and playing at that school at least for a year.
For sure. And I'm not saying it's not none of them. It's not even a vast majority of them. But we would all say here, a significant portion of these kids move between.
It's increased
the
considerably.
And I think it's going to go up. I think it was Walker Limmer said these kids have agents. Yeah, I mean, some of them actually have agents now in high school, and then it's crazy. And you're looking at it's going to increase. And what we knew, I mean, I'm going to be that old guy saying, "Oh God, remember when?" But I do. You remember those February signing days? That the fun of all of that is completely gone now. Because when you did get that letter of intent, for better or for worse, it was kind of horrible because you kind of trapped that kid. But the kid was trapped, meaning that kid was going to be pretty much on your team. Because if they're those top recruits we're talking about, they're going to be productive, right? They're not going to get up and leave within a year. Why? Because they want to be out in 3. So why are they going to have that movement and risk that? If they got a good situation, they're pretty much going to stay where they are. And also, if they're not happy, they're less likely to bounce in the first chance. If they get to spring camp and they're, let's say, 3rd on the depth chart, they're not just going to bounce right away. Why? Because they don't want to sit out a whole year. So I think that recruiting is fun. Recruiting is these services do a very good job. But another thing people are missing on the boat here on is it's not like it's science. And if you go back and you look at less than half of the guys that are quote unquote 5 stars get drafted in the NFL.
Yeah, but that's still like 3 to 4 times more than the 4-star.
But the people, all those people that lost that, half of those 5 stars that didn't make the NFL lost their minds is what I'm talking about, Mark. I'm not saying percentage wise and numbers wise, right? Yes. But I'm talking about the fan bases. And so, I mean, I remember literally, this is true. People, this is back in the day with when Clay Helton was there. If Helton can land, so and so, then we're going to be happy. And if he can't, then this is that blah blah blah. And they hinged what the coaching staff was doing based on these horrible. I think even Helton had like a number 5 recruiting class. It was filled with a bunch of skill guys, no linemen, but everyone was kind of happy because they were getting all of these 5 stars and 4 stars, and they were studs, and they did go off to the NFL. But the teams weren't winning. Why? Because it wasn't a well-rounded class. And so even though they were finishing high in these recruiting rankings, or big one. I remember Corey Foreman. People were losing their minds when Corey Foreman wasn't getting picked up by USC. And they're saying, "Oh, I can't believe this is happening." And I'm not to disparage the kid. I hope he just goes off this year. Is he at Fresno State, I think? But I mean, I hope he goes to the NFL. He has a great career. But people were losing their minds that USC might miss out on this guy. Generational player. We lose this guy. The services were hyping him as the best player in the country. If we lose him, it's all over our own backyard. And then nothing.
This would be a great exercise to go through each recruiting class starting about 2022, I would say, and just go back through them and pinpoint what happened to that guy, what happened to that guy, what happened to that guy, what happened to that guy.
Well, you could go to if you go to the USC site on 247, on the bottom is a ribbon of what they say are the best recruits all time at USC. And if you look at that ribbon of the best recruits of all time at USC, it's a who's who of a lot of people that didn't quite live up to their billing. Yeah. And then you look, where's Reggie Bush? Where's, where's Lofa Tatupu? Where's Troy Polamalu? Where are these guys? And they're not on that list. But at the top of the 247 list, there's a bunch of guys that, well, I mean, they were good players. They're great Trojans. I'm not disparaging them, but they certainly shouldn't be the top rated guys. So I want to say back up a little bit, you guys, when you freak out when, well, this guy's a 5-star and this guy's just a 4-star. I mean, let them have their careers. And the one thing that this staff is talking about is development. And why do you think Utah plays out of their mind? Utah's not full of 4 and 5-star guys, but they have been developing. They have a plan. They have a culture there, and they develop their players, and they win. So I'm not saying USC should go that route. I'm not saying that, but when I hear people freaking out about this guy's a 5-star, he's a 4-star. Hey, this lineman's only a 3-star. It just, people get hung up on these stars way too much, and I think it's time to slow down and actually look at the play on the field.
True. In volume, it matters, though. Those star rankings matter.
I know the shell game, how it works. I understand.
They do. They just do. That cannot. I get into this argument all the time with people that call in and discuss this with me. And I'm not a recruiting guy, but I can do math.
If you do the raw massive numbers across and say, well, this percentage is a higher percentage. Okay,
we don't know about any individual 5-star that's going to turn out, or a 3-star that's going to be JJ Watt, who was a 2-star and turned out to be one of the greatest players of all time. Yes,
that part is true, Mark. That part is true. But I'm saying I've seen full classes go through schools, I don't know, say USC, and then they're losing 5, 6, 8. But the recruiting stars said this, we should be winning. There's a lot more that goes into it.
If you take the top 6 rated talent composite teams from the college football playoff era, they basically define the college football playoff
I know.
era.
It's a well-developed argument. Yes. You're right. Stars matter 100%.
In volume, they do matter.
I know, but you only get a finite amount. Sure, if you could pick 100 swath and say, well, we'll take the top 30% of them, then yeah, it's a great argument. But a recruiting class is only X amount of scholarships. So that big number you're talking about, when you break it down to the amount of picks you get to get out of that big swath, you're playing a numbers game, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have a great class because you have this guy ranked here and this guy ranked there. Especially when it comes down to, well, where are they? This guy's a number 100 player. This guy's a number 300 player. That's when it really starts getting silly. You take a top 50 player, that guy's going to be a stud. You start getting into the weeds on the 3-star and 4-star people. That's why I think there's a lot of guesswork going on.
Well, whether the chicken comes before the egg, and we've had that discussion as well, whether the offers and the coaches' evaluations are pushing the rankings, or the rankings are causing them to, as coaches and scouts, to go look at those players, I don't care. I just know that the end result is pretty damn accurate. It just is.
A lot of busts. I bet you can go through, if you did your you look down your Ohio State list of all those high guys you thought were going to be really great players. I don't know, even like a receiver that was a 5-star that's now over on Penn State. We can talk about that later on as well. Who's a solid contributor. Most of them don't.
It's like if you threw the best teams in the country all in the SEC, somebody's got to lose games. They can't all come through. But the recruiting rankings are extremely accurate. Yes,
you just said extremely accurate. Did you ever think that maybe they, as you get, if you ever noticed when some guys go to certain schools, their rankings slowly go up? So then if you have guys that go to Alabama and then they're going to win, then you go, hey, look all these guys who put our 5-stars went to Alabama and won a national championship.
And what was my last point?
Has nothing with development or coaches or the fact that it's Alabama and Nick Saban. It's just that they went there. So these 5-stars went to Alabama. Therefore, the system's perfect.
And my most recent point was, I'm not telling you that they arrive at that ranking legitimately. I'm just telling you however they arrive at that ranking, it's accurate. It is by and large accurate.
Yeah, the final rankings. That are a lot more accurate.
Final rankings. And I understand. I bet if I look in the chat right now, there are going to be all sorts of aberrations. People are going to be picking out examples from 2016 and all over the place. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in mass.
Roger, open your freaking ears. When on earth did I say that? This is the things I love to hear. This is the stuff. Roger, when did I say that I've accepted it? I'm happy we lost 5-stars. Work on the listening. Work on your listening, Roger. That's embarrassing.